While everyone was raving Nier Automata, I was busy playing other games. So last year I decided I would get into the universe of Nier, starting with Drakengard, which I will probably never reveal because I don't want to go through that miserable experience ever again. More importantly, this year I picked up a better entry to play, Nier, on the Xbox 360, also known as Nier Gestalt. I'm not going to explain why Gestalt and Replicant existed as separate games or what the differences are. I was very aware of the remake that came out recently too, still I wanted to play the original Gestalt, against everyone's advice of staying away from it. I'm glad I ignored everyone as I usually do when they tell me a game aged badly, because Nier is a fine game.
You'll never take Yona from me!
The story focuses on the titular protagonist, Nier, and his sick daughter, Yona, for whom he makes as much money as possible from all sorts of jobs done for the local village. One day, she sneaks out to some dangerous ruins to find a flower she believes could grant her wish to get better, and her dad has to save her from hostile creatures known as Shades. There he meets a sentient book called Grimoire Vice, team up with him to rescue Yona. With Vice and local village leaders' knowledge of ancient legends, it's found out Yona is afflicted with Black Scroll, and Vice is tied to some story about sealed verses used to fight an evil grimoire to restore peace to the world, and Nier believes getting those sealed verses will help cure Yona. This is just the beginning of this story, and if you know anything about the director Yoko Taro, you know there is no way it stays that straightforward and basic. Nier meets a couple other characters who join him, Kaine, a foul-mouthed badass that seems to have a curse of her own, and Emil, a naive kid with great magic powers. The conversation between all four of them is often interesting or funny. The dynamic involving Vice is the best because he's such an arrogant prick who always questions or mocks the character's decisions with sarcasm. But the best thing about the cast is that every one of them matures over the course of the plot. Even Vice. By far the most interesting thing about the narrative in Nier is the ending progression. When you first beat the game, you're given the option to start a new game plus, starting from the halfway point. But now, you're given a lot more context through Kaine's inner monologue and backstory, and cutscenes and dialogue exposing what the enemies you kill are thinking or saying. This changes your point of view completely, and if you're sensitive enough, makes you feel terrible for killing them. That is not to say the amount of lore that builds this medieval-looking post-apocalyptic setting isn't also fascinating. My favorite part of Drakengard was its lore, and Nier also delivers, being directly connected to that game's ending E. How it ties directly to it isn't explicit in the game itself, however, so unfortunately you need supplementary material to understand how one leads to the other. But the gist of it is that the ending from Drakengard ultimately causes our world to regress to almost Middle Ages level, and humanity seems to be in the brink of extinction with little hope of recovery. To reach the conclusive, definitive, final, ultimate ending D, you have to play through the second half of the game 3 times. Personally, I wasn't too bothered by this, because your level and inventory carries over, so everything dies off very quickly, and each playthrough clocks around the 6 or 7 hour mark or less. I can definitely see a lot of people hating this though. You also have to collect all 33 weapons in the game, which sounds daunting, but most of them are sold in shops and others are hard to miss if you break every box you see. Gameplay seems very standard action RPG fare with super basic moves you can do, dodge rolling and a block button. You will also assign 2 magic spells of your choice to the shoulder buttons. The targeting of spells takes some time to get used to. Thankfully your MP regenerates over time and you never lack enough to at least spam your basic Dark Wave spell. Nier can use 3 different types of weapons. Each excels at one thing, but in my experience you can deal with all enemies and bosses using whatever type you prefer. It's just not an efficient way of doing it. I use two-handed swords to deal with a few armored bosses and one-handed swords for everything else. You unlock a lot of spells, but I only used about half of them. The situations in which the other half could be useful were way too limited. In the first half of the game, it might feel like you don't encounter enemies very often. You spend a lot of time traversing the field areas without needing to fight anything, as it seems rather peaceful. This is by design and is tied to the narrative, but Nier's overworld and dungeon combat isn't really the main attraction of its gameplay. It's the experimentation with a variety of level presentations. You will deal with bullet hell mechanics in battle often, but also go through top-down twin-stick shooter segments, and side-scrolling segments, and visual novel segments, and even some callbacks to the original Resident Evil and some isometric hack and slash. A lot of those segments are short, but none of them feel bad to play. But the most amazing thing is they make perfect narrative sense to be designed that way. I am a gameplay first, narrative second type of player, and I know some of you hate hearing that sentence. Anyway, even I have to admit the narrative is the driving force in Nier. Without it, this game would never hit the emotions and thrills it needed. Because in the end, all the playable content is just fine. Fine and nothing more. It's the connection they have with the narrative that makes them interesting. Well, not everything is all fine. The questing can be rather obtuse if you don't use online guides, and the trips they demand can get tedious. The fishing is poorly explained by the game, though I found it very easy to handle once you learn how it really works, and the best part is fishing has almost no RNG involved. There's also farming. It's very limited as it should be in a game like this, and easy to understand. It can be profitable if you plant the right crops, but I think the game has enough faster sources of money. Besides, it takes between 24 to 36 hours for the crops to be ready to be harvested. And I do mean real life hours. This was the single reason I gave up trying to complete all achievements in the game. The game isn't massive, but there is so much running around back and forth, I wish it didn't take until the second half of the game to unlock some kind of fast travel. And even then, the fast travel you do unlock helps a lot less than you might think. There aren't a lot of music tracks in this core, but the few that stand out are very beautiful songs. Many have vocals singing in fictional tongue and give the Nier series a very unique music identity. Most of them sound very organic if I had to pick a word to describe it. After absolutely despising Drakengard as a game, I was worried I'd hate Nier. I'm now glad Yoko Taro was given the chance to direct this game. Nier isn't ever going to be one of my favorite games, but I don't regret playing it, and can safely recommend it to anyone who appreciates strong narrative in video games. If you're the type who skips cutscenes and doesn't talk to NPCs if you're not forced to do it, this game will not leave you a good impression. And if you're not convinced games can tell their stories and make you emotionally connect to the narrative through gameplay, you should give Nier a try. Do as I say, not as I do. I bought Gestalt, but to anyone else I say you should probably just get the new version of Nier Replicant. That's gonna be it for my Nier Gestalt review. Thank you for watching.